Hello and welcome to week 13 in the psychology of adulthood. We're taking on two chapters this semester. Chapter 12, late adulthood, and chapter 13, changing roles. So I start off with chapter 12 about looking at the actual physiology of aging and the changes that predictably happen. And what that really kind of points to is this notion that the assumptions that we have about decline that come with aging are more associated with disease process than the natural processes of aging. So the quote unquote senior moments that somebody might experience because they're aging are not so much because, oh, I'm just getting old. There's probably something going on, and there's all kinds of physiological processes that can interrupt our cognitive processes, and we see that throughout our lives. The bias here is that elderly people are losing their facilities, so those early signs of what might be a disease process sometimes get ignored. So it's important to recognize that. There's also a changing in priorities. We're going to talk a little bit about that in chapter 13, where the focus of an older person's energies might have shifted. So those forgetful things and paying little attention to certain things or whatever may actually be a function of the individual's changes in priorities. And I can say this because here I am. I'm 60 years old and I can feel my priorities changing. How I like to spend my time, the things I like to do, approaching end of career in terms of this kind of career. Not close, still going to be around for a while, but uh, different kinds of goals that I have. At the same time, being just as scatterbrained as I've been my entire life. I lose my phone all the time. I can't find my keys, little things like that. And I think it's as much a part of the fact that I'm distracted thinking about other things than it is that, I'm having any sort of process going on. Although I'm very aware of, in fact, I'm going to share with you folks. I didn't plan on doing this, but just the other day, I had a pretty vivid nightmare regarding Alzheimer's. And what I experienced, I believe, was the nightmare was me with Alzheimer's and getting confused that I was buying tickets for a theater and dropped all my cards everywhere. Couldn't find the card I wanted to, lost track of what the price was, and all of this stuff. And it was a very, very vivid. I don't know, but felt extremely vivid, not only of the sense of awareness of loss per se, as much as, in addition to that, the sensation of other people and how they were viewing me and the impatience and why aren't you understanding this? And it was a horrible, I'm going to tell you, it was a horrible experience. And so I'm not going to claim that I have gained from this any deep insight into the lived experience of Alzheimer's, but it was close enough for me not to want it. And so I didn't need that lesson, but boy, it was a very, very weird, nightmarish type experience. So, how do we do everything we can to have the healthiest aging that we want? And this is really this chapter focuses a lot on the kind of things that I'm going to be asking you to do on the final assessment, which is aging well. So this chapter could have been called Aging Well. And maybe there is a chapter. I'm trying to think if there is a chapter in this book called Aging Well. Kind of a major theme that's going on, certainly. And we see in here the results of the now world famous Valiant study that's done at Harvard, following a contingent of students that that went through Harvard University or associated with Harvard University, followed them on a longitudinal study. We're now into the next generation, those individuals' kids. I say we, I have nothing to do with this study, but the study is continuing. It is the longest standing longitudinal study on human lifespan. And it really asks the questions, what does it take to have a healthy aging process? And so let's look at the results of that study. So just general results that have come out because of that study. Here we have from the course book, we have the Aging Well list from the Valiant study. It is not the bad things that happen to us that doom us. It is the good people that happen to us at any age that facilitate enjoyable old age. So that's a finding. Healthy, healing relationships are facilitated by a capacity for gratitude, forgiveness, and for taking people inside, letting them know who you are, developing deep, meaningful relationships. A good marriage at 50 predicts positive aging at 80. But surprisingly, low cholesterol at 50 did not. So there's kind of interesting correlations here. Alcohol abuse, unrelated to unhappy childhood, consistently predicted unsuccessful aging. Learning to play and create after retirement, and learning to gain younger friends as we lose older ones, adds more to life's enjoyment than income. Objective good physical health was less important to successful aging than was subjective health. What we see in that too is a acceptance of a new norm. I, at my age, cannot physically do the things I did at 20. I know this for a fact because I often find myself trying to do that, and I pay for it. So these realities become, rather than disparaging the fact that I can't do those things as well anymore, I still push the boundaries in terms of exercising and trying to keep as active as I can. But at the same time, it's a new norm and I'm okay with that. And just leading into this part and developing relationships, being open, creativity later in life, all of those things. These are, I will say that I've been doing those for quite a long time. The other part that I go into here is and it kind of brings up the Freudian perspective that particularly the work of Freud and his daughter Anna on defense mechanisms. And we see there's a section in the course book here, successful lifespan development. And what we are looking at is a set of these mechanisms for coping really draw from the research of Freud and Anna, of Sigmund Freud and Anna Freud. And so we see here the list over projection, meaning the feelings that I'm having, I'm assuming somebody else is having them. Passive aggression, dissociation, separating from the situation, acting out, fantasy, going into fantasy world, including the fantasy world brought about by the use of substances and whatnot. These are seen as not the most functional coping mechanisms for all of this. So what do we see in terms of the defense mechanisms and how they can, the positive defense mechanisms? And we see sublimation. Doesn't come out of very many textbooks. Sublimation being the ability for us to take a negative situation and turn it into a positive. And we go to the next page here for the list. Humor, altruism, the giving to others, volunteering, being kind to others, and interestingly enough, suppression. Now this has actually been a really long kind of topic of interest for me, is the notion of suppression is and I'll just, you have something that you've done in the past that you regret. You shouldn't have done it. Those kinds of things might be huge, might be small, and it continues to occupy space in your mind. So suppression is the capacity that we have to tell ourselves to no longer think about that. We don't necessarily need to go to the point of denying that it exists. I'm choosing to not burden yourself with the mistakes that you made in the past. Maybe even finding peace with those. And that's who I was then. This is who I am now. I am not going to live day to day the regrets of past things. A choice for me. That may or may not repair any damage associated with your behavior or what happened. But there is that choice to suppress those notions. Now, suppressed memories when I first entered the field of counseling, there's a large, and still to this day, a large notion, or a popular notion, I should say, that individuals need to face their demons, and and reiterating the past and going through that and processing it and whatnot. And I had come from an undergraduate world that had a whole lot of Freud in it and a whole lot of behaviorism in it, and I wasn't seeing necessarily, at least in my case, or I also saw, at least there was this possibility that rehashing the past was not necessarily a good thing to do, particularly if the likelihood of making changes to repair that are impossible. It happened. That's what it is. I can't change the past, kind of things. So it sort of was a contrary idea for me, that the goal of counseling was to break through suppression, have force people to deal with what they've done and whatnot. When in fact, Freud's notion and Anna were that suppression was healthy, that there was a function to this that helped people to thrive better, to be able to live in the moment, be able to do what they need to do now, and that this was a protection mechanism for an ego that had they, if that person is forced to reckon with those things, it can be a wrecking ball, wrecking ball in their lives, and they can become, traumatized by their own trauma, and regardless on which side of that trauma they're on. And so it was very validating to me when I first encountered the Valiant study, for them to look at suppression in its original context, which was the capacity to be able to take the wrong things that have happened to you, or the wrong things that you've done, and compartmentalize them, because I need to be here in the moment. And when I'm ready and willing and able, maybe at different times, or maybe repeatedly or slowly over time, venturing into that area is a very, very positive aspect of human development. So here we are, the end of chapter 15. We have one, I'm looking at the wrong class, sorry. The discussion is simply to discuss all these things, to talk about healthy aging and whatnot. And I want you to do this in light of the final assignment, to throw out some ideas about your own choices in healthy aging, barriers to that, maybe things that are difficult to compartmentalize. These things, altruism, humor, those kinds of aspects of your personality that I'm going to be asking for at the end of the paper. Now, chapter 13 brings in the notion of a sociological perspective on this, which has been all over this course, and that is a big part of who we are, particularly in the West, here is what we do when we ask somebody and we're getting to know them, we often first ask their name, and then the second question is almost always, so what do you do? And it's a key aspect of our identity. It's less often that we're going to hear an individual ask different questions when we're getting to know them. We ask different questions like, "Hey, what's your name? What's your favorite hobby?" That would throw somebody off. It did. In fact, I'll tell another story. I was at a show, and we were on break, and there was a woman that was at the bar that was just a little bit down from me, and I was having a drink, and they were and that person was, I'll be honest, she was very attractive, and she had guys all around her the whole time, and stuff like that. And she was very noticeable and very friendly and all that. And so the guys kind of dissipated it a little bit, and she was right next to, said, "Hey, how you doing?" and stuff. So we started talking a little bit. And what I experienced was an individual who was an absolute brilliant conversationalist. So she had extremely good social skills, and she immediately started asking questions that would not be the kind of questions to when you're introducing to a stranger. So what's your name? Shake hands and stuff like this, and she goes, "What's your favorite song to play and why?" And it was like, really? And immediately, and I saw this happen. She immediately drew people in, and it was an extremely good social skill. And I only tell this story because it's so different from the normal patterns of getting to know someone when we say, "What's your name? What do you do?" Those kind of things. Our idea of our identity is often very, very encompassed by what we do. That could be raising kids. It could be whatever. It could be our hobbies. It could be whatever. But oftentimes it's our job. So here we are in the part of our lifespan where that might be undergoing some change. Our active participation in the economy, our contribution, our making things, our doing our work, and all that might start to transform. We're moving into a new social role. And maybe through the process of generativity, we've moved to a place where we're supervising, where we're teaching, where we're passing on our information to the next generation and whatnot. And then we look at retirement and that dramatic change in our roles that we have. So we enter into here Erickson's final stage of integrity versus despair. Oftentimes, individuals in this age will have a psychosocial need to reminisce. What was my life like? While we just talked about regrets and whatnot, we're also in this part of life where we're reviewing that stuff, and where does that fit in this tapestry of my life, this product that I've created called my life, my legacy. What am I leaving behind? Those kind of things. We look at work transitions, friend transitions, changes in how we use our energies creatively, all of these things going on. For the discussion, I introduce you to a essay that was composed by a friend of mine named Dr. Vion, and he wrote a book called, he wrote many things. He was a intellectual academic of extreme value to me, and he wrote The Wagon Wheel as an essay on aging and the roles that aging people should play in continuing to be a part of society. And what I'm asking you to do in the discussion for chapter 13 is to reflect on that. Reflect on that essay, meaning to you, meaning to other people around you that you know are aging and whatnot, and certainly your own reflections as you anticipate. Now, part of the joy of learning about the next stages in life is that we can anticipate now how we want to place ourselves and prepare. Just like when we were talking about Plan B, setting up the future. So understanding the challenges that are specific to the future, we're able to now prepare ourselves to age well. Hence the final assignment, really kind of pushing you toward that idea of this opportunity before you to create the plan B, to create the capacities and skill sets that you need to deal with aging and whatnot. So kind of the intervention component of this class. I think the real advantage of this class is to get people thinking about not only their adult development and where they are now, but preparing for that future that we all have to embrace at one time or another. And that's this week. So we have chapters 12, chapter 13, and only 2 discussions. There's no quizzes or assignments or whatever. This is probably a good week to look at that final assignment on aging well and start putting some stuff together. It's not a difficult assignment. There's academic components to it, but it's largely reflective, kind of my deal, largely reflective essays on your process of aging well and your anticipation of aging well. So a good time to start taking some notes on that and starting to write that up. So have a great week. Take care, and I will see you online.